Good morning once again. My team and I are absolutely thrilled to be here this morning. I hope that you have your notepads ready and that your minds are going to be open. As this promises to be a morning that is filled with insight, inspiration, and impactful conversations. My name is Nonhle Nhlapho. I'm the Vice Chairperson of the PsySSA Student Division. I'm also a student counseling psychologist. I'm playing a small role this morning, which includes moderating our webinar, and it is both a privilege and an honor. So this morning, we've collaboratively designed this webinar to deliver high-impact conversations that empower you on your application journey. Our esteemed speakers will translate complex strategies into simple, relatable tools. So consider this session a valuable tool in your growing toolkit. It's designed to guide and support you as you navigate the master's application process. We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to PsySSA Head Office for their unwavering support in making this webinar possible. Our speakers are truly experts, not just because they've conquered the rigorous application process and completed their M1 year, but because they are deeply committed to making knowledge and resources accessible. They've consistently volunteered their insights to inspire and equip students like myself and yourself, delivering transformative results with precision, agility, and intellectual depth. A heartfelt thank you to all psychology students for joining us this morning and for inspiring us to design meaningful webinars like this one, right? Before we start, I would just like to make a disclaimer. The views and insights that will be shared in this webinar are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the opinions or official stance of any university selection committee. Admission processes are complex and are subject to multiple factors beyond the strategies that will be discussed here this morning. This webinar is intended to provide general insights into the selection process and does not guarantee admission into any program. Attendees are encouraged to refer to official university guidelines for specific requirements and criteria. So we're just going to get into it. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker this morning. She's going to share her screen, and if possible, she's also going to share a PowerPoint presentation. The first session will focus on 3 critical aspects of the master's application process. First, we'll discuss the importance of your autobiography and motivational letter, including how to craft a compelling narrative that highlights your unique journey and passion for psychology. Next, we'll delve into the individual panel interview, exploring possible questions that you might encounter and practical approaches to confidently present yourself during this stage. Finally, we'll examine the role of the interview and application process as a whole, helping you to understand its purpose in assessing your readiness for the program and how to align your preparation with its objectives. So our first speaker is Selina. Selina Masetele is a dedicated intern counseling psychologist in the final year of her master's in counseling psychology at the University of Pretoria. She completed an undergraduate and honors degree in psychology at Northwest University. Currently, she provides psychological services at 2 subacute rehabilitation hospitals, supporting patients recovering from strokes, amputations, and other life-altering conditions. Selina is deeply passionate about trauma recovery and working with children and adolescents. Her holistic, person-centered approach integrates evidence-based techniques to support unique therapeutic journeys. Beyond her clinical scope, Selina is devoted to mentoring aspiring psychologists, sharing her first-hand experience of the challenges and uncertainties of the master's application process. Over to you, Selina.
Thank you so much, Nonhle. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Selina, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nonhle and
Yes, thank
PsySSA.
you.
Thank you, everyone. So I just want to start off by saying thank you, Nonhle, for this amazing opportunity to collaborate with you and the organization. It is truly a privilege, and I'm truly looking forward to just being here and sharing what I can share to help the future psychologists in their journey of applications. I know, like you said, this journey is not easy. You know, but we are here because of our passion to share knowledge and to make sure that it's not as difficult as it could be without the knowledge there. So I'm just gonna share my screen. I hope I know how to do that. Send request. Okay, I've just sent request to share my screen. Can share. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, as Nonhle said, my name is Selina Masetele. I'm an intern counseling psychologist, and I work at two subacute hospitals, rehab hospitals, where we offer psychological services to the patients in the. We also do outpatient therapy, which is where we work with children at different homes and things like that. So, it's an amazing opportunity, and it's very exciting, and I'm so privileged to be part of that. And then this morning I will be sharing on autobiographies, motivational letters, individual panel interviews, and role plays. Um, and with that said, I have a few disclaimers, and I think Nonhle already mentioned this. So different universities have different expectations. They have different criterias, and what we will be sharing here is it cannot cover everything that everybody expects of you. So it is important to always check these specific guidelines to make sure that you are aware of what is expected from you from the different universities. And I also want to highlight that there is no perfect formula to getting into a master's program. There is no one size fits all answer. We try our best to give the knowledge and insights that we have based on our experiences, but it is just our experiences and things change so quickly as well. So please be aware of that we will be sharing insights, but ultimately your application should reflect you and your due diligence in making sure that you do your research and that you know what is expected, like we said. Another thing that's very important that I would like you to be intentional about in this session is self-reflection. Self-reflection is so important, guys. Your ability to think about yourself deeply matters. Your experiences and how you're feeling in every moment and its impact on you. That is such an important skill to begin to really be intentional about nourishing and practicing. So I want to encourage you in this webinar, also use it as a time to reflect on what comes up, write it down, reflect on how you feel, things like that. It's a very, very important skill to practice as you go, and I want to encourage you to do that. And also remember, yes, you are here, you're applying for your master's, you want to get in, but also see this as an opportunity to prepare you for the reality of being a psychologist. Because what we do as psychologists is reflect. What we do as psychologists is to think deeply about different things. It's to research, research different universities. You never stop researching, you never stop learning, you never stop being curious. So remember that this is also part of your preparation to one day becoming a psychologist, even if maybe this year is not the year that you get in, maybe in the future. But let this be a preparation, okay? And then another thing is I'd like this to be really an interactive session. I'm going to present my slides, but I'm going to have a part where we go and we criticize some of the past biographies that I've written, and I want you to think deeply about it. And as I'm going through the slides, make note of things that come up or that you find interesting. Because when we do get into the interactive part, I'm going to ask you to please unmute and tell me what is standing out in that particular extract. What do you think I could have improved? What do you think is in line with what a autobiography needs to look like? Okay. I hope that makes sense, but please, I want it to be an engaging session. I want you to not just be consumers, I want you to be partakers as well. Also, please ask your questions and I'll do my best to answer them as well. Okay. So jumping right in, what is an autobiography, right? And I'm going to be as basic as possible, even if it's always good to write down whatever new comes up, even if you maybe do know some of these things. But I feel like an autobiography is one of the most important things that you can write. It's literally the first interaction that the panel has with you. This is where they literally meet you before they ever see your face, ever get to shake your hand. They literally are getting to know you through that piece of paper that you're going to write for them. It's their first impression of how you think, how you reflect, how you write, how you make sense of your experiences. So it is important to take intentional time to prepare well for this, to write it in a way is that will literally let the panel know who you are, and why you are ready to be trained. One thing that I did not know, and this is some of the mistakes that I had made when I first applied. It is important to know that an autobiography is not a CV. Some of the universities do ask you about your job experiences, where you've worked, and things like that. So it is not necessary to put that into your autobiography. So it is not a CV. You don't have to write about your marks, your academic achievements, or your work experiences, unless they obviously you pick one that does have an impact and helps you in showcasing who you are in a way um that is beneficial towards your application process. Okay. Also know that it is not an academic essay, guys. It is not, you do not need to write references in your essay. This is one thing I also didn't know when I first applied. I thought I needed to have references in my autobiography. And it's not necessary. Please, you're not writing about psychology as a field or why psychologists are needed or why mental health is important. You are literally writing about your life story and why your life story has prepared you to become a psychologist, right? So it is important to be aware of that so that you don't include unnecessary things that the panel feel like, "Ah, you didn't even bother preparing and asking the right questions of what an autobiography is." So it is important to know what it is not. Okay. It is not a list of life events. They do not want to know a timeline of your life. They do not want they don't want to see, okay, this is the day you were born, this is where it's not necessary for you to go that in depth in terms of your life events. Um, Please, they just want to see if you can make sense of your experiences, if you can reflect on your experiences and how those experiences have prepared you to be a psychologist. Okay. So reflection is very important. You will hear a lot of people talk about reflection. Um, Reflection is a strong autobiography demonstrates your ability to reflect deeply. It is not just about telling a story, it's about showing how you have processed that story. Ask yourself these questions when you're writing your autobiography. Why has this experience made me curious about people? Because ultimately, when you want to be a psychologist, you have to have some form of curiosity about people, about human nature, about why people do the things that they do. Why are people resilient? Why do other people not go to therapy and still they don't develop mental illnesses? Like, you need to have that curiosity about life. So it is important that somewhere in your autobiography that you mention where did that curiosity come from, what experience led you to be curious. Okay. Also, it is important to ask yourself, how has this shaped my way of thinking, relating, or understanding human nature? This is very, very, it sounds almost like, how am I going to do it? But once you sit down and you think and you intentionally go back to each and every life event, you will be able to think, how did this shape the way I think about things, the way I think about humans, the way I think about race, the way I think about, in general, everything concerning human nature. Okay. And then what does this say about the way I make sense of the world? It is so important to be aware of your worldview as a aspiring psychologist. You need to know, how do you view the world and where did it come from? What influenced how you view the world? Is it the environment that you grew up? Is it the way your dad was and how he just his personality and how that impacted you? Like, how do you make sense of the world? What is your worldview? You need to know those things. And like, one thing about an autobiography as well, whatever you put in that paper, you are going to be asked questions about it in your interviews. I found that most of the things that I put in my autobiography are questions that literally came up in the panel interviews, in the individual interviews. So it's stuff that it's basically, autobiography is the first interview. So you need to be able to answer those questions that they will ask you in your panel interviews or individual interviews when you do go through. It is also important to understand in what way has your life experience or life events or life story prepared you to be a psychologist. We 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 didn't just want to become a psychologist. There is something in our lives that has prepared us to be psychologists. And it can be trauma. Sometimes it's not trauma, but there is. And if you go and you look, you will find it. So it is important to be able to answer that question of what has prepared you to be a psychologist in your life story, right? If it's your job, you can also mention that, but don't go in depth and tell them each and every job you've done and why you think that job has prepared you to be a psychologist. That's not the type of avenue I want you to go into. I think rather focus on your life story and how your life story and experiences have prepared you to be a psychologist. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then I speak a lot about reflection. So I think it's important that we talk about what is reflection, because I asked one of my colleagues, like, what is reflection? And sometimes we don't always know what reflection is. And I think it's a very important thing to know, so that when somebody says reflect, you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, so reflection is more than just remembering or recounting past experiences. It's about making sense of them in a meaningful way, right? And this question came up in one of my interviews. I will speak a little bit on the different questions when we get to the interview part. But one of the questions I received in one of the interviews was, how do you make sense of the things that has happened to you? And that requires reflection, because they are literally asking you, how did you make sense of this when it was happening? That is reflection. It's not just about saying this happened and you're not able to realize how you literally had to go and think about it and make sense of it in your own mind. Okay, so number one is seeing beyond the event. Reflection isn't just describing what happened, it's understanding why it happened, why it mattered. Ask yourself, how did it shape me? Why did I respond the way I did? What did this experience teach me? Okay, some of these things teach us invaluable life lessons, and it is important that you ask yourself, did I learn something? And if you didn't learn something, then it's fine, say that. If you're still figuring out what you learned in it and you think it's just a situation that should have never happened and you didn't get any lessons from it, that's okay. But be able to reflect on it, okay? Number two, connecting the dots. Reflection involves linking your past to your present, okay? Showing how experiences influenced your way of thinking, your emotional responses, and your path towards psychology. Instead of saying, I moved around a lot as a child, reflect on how that shaped your ability to adapt, observe people, or develop empathy. So do you see that? There's literally, when you say something, back it up with reflection. Don't just mention life events and then leave it at that. Okay. And then reflection also involves holding complexity. Life isn't black and white. We know that. Um, Reflection means acknowledging contradictions and nuances, both the good and the difficult aspects of an experience. And I think if you can do this, this is so beautiful. You can have an amazing piece of paper that you present to the panel, because it can be a discussion of what you were grappling with, because like I said, life experiences aren't black and white, and there's some things that you can really be able to say this contradicted, this is what was happening, this is how I felt, and there's these nuances of how good and bad can coexist. And if you can write such a piece, I think it will make an amazing autobiography to reflect on the nuances of life. Okay. Another thing that's important when reflecting is taking ownership of your narrative, okay? It's not just about what happened to you, it's about how you make meaning of it now. Okay. This will show the panel that you can process experiences without being stuck in them. So it's important to ask, so what? In everything that you write, every story you tell should answer, why does this matter? Why am I including it in the autobiography? What purpose and value is it serving? How has it made me curious about people? How has it prepared me for psychology? Okay, so those are the type of questions that you need to make sure that you answer when you read your biography. When you ask somebody to read your autobiography, ask them, is this what it's answering? Does this give you a clear picture of why I feel my life story has prepared me for psychology and to be a psychologist? Okay, and then I just went to the different, universities application processes and what they ask. So this is literally what they ask when they talk about the autobiography. It's from the different universities. I didn't put their names in, but they are also very clear on what they're asking you. Sorry, there's this thing that's, yes, it moved. Okay. So the first one literally tells you, please attach an in-depth biographical self-reflection of your life thus far. So what you're paying attention to is both the positive and negative aspects thereof. They literally ask you discuss those nuances, those positive and negative aspects of your life. You don't have to just present the bad. So be intentional about that. But it is a reflective piece. It is a self-reflection. You are reflecting, and when you are doing this, you need to be thinking about the past points that I made just now. And then there's another one that said write a personal account of your life. Okay. This statement should give us an indication of your family of origin, important life events, formative influences, and your current circumstances. This is literally in an application, and they are so clear on what they want you to do, what they are asking you to do. So I think the applications process are trying the applications at best, they are very clear on what they want. And if you read, you will realize, okay, this is what they're interested in. Are you able to provide a psychological insight of your life, your personal development, all right, and why it has prepared you for a career in counseling psychology? Another one that I looked at is, you see there's different, even the other one's 2 type pages, the other one's 3 pages, the other one's 1,500 words. So be mindful of those guidelines so that you make sure that you stick to it, okay? The last one, it says your life story should be brief but a rich description of your life history. Okay, it's your life history. You are describing it, but then you are what? You are reflecting on it. You're not just mentioning this is what happened in your life history, and then you leave it at that. You need to talk about how it's shaped you into who you are, your perspectives, and how you relate to the world. So it is important that you read these things so that you can give them exactly what they want. That's why it doesn't work for you to copy and paste and apply with one autobiography to all the universities. They're all specific to what they want. But obviously, you will have one important life event that you would want to maybe speak to the different universities. But in the way you write it will be quite different. Okay. So there's one about MS clinical psychology. They ask you for a personal motivation and a rich description of your life history. So this will be available, I think, on the PsySSA's website. So if you want to go through the specific university things that I wrote down, you can do that. I'm not going to go into it in depth now, but jump. So we're gonna move on. This is what I want you guys to read, and you're going to criticize it. I do want just at least 2 volunteers. Tell me, what are you seeing in terms of how I wrote it? What is what are you seeing in terms of the things I said you must look out about reflection? What are the questions that you see I'm answering? It's just a short one from one of my papers, and I'm not going to tell you whether it was successful or not at this moment. I just want you to read it, or I'll read it, and then please 2 volunteers based on what we've shared, just mention what you would change or what is a bit good. You can keep it, let us engage in that regard. Okay. So this one I'm going to read to you. So I say I was born on the 15th of September 1995 in Potchefstroom, Northwest Province. I'm the youngest of 3 children from both of my parents. However, I have 3 older maternal half sisters along with 1 maternal half brother late, as well as 3 active siblings, 1 brother and twin sisters. My maternal brother was tragically killed at age 17. I was only 2 years old when he died, too young to appropriately mourn him. I got to know my late brother through the stories my mother told us, which led me to sometimes wonder how life would have turned out had he still been around, whether he would have been the overprotective or overbearing brother. My encounters with death have always been indirect and distant ones. Thus, I've never experienced the emotions associated with it intensely. It is only now, 20 years later, when I see my mother become physically sick and cry on his birthday, year in and year out, that I realize the great impact that his death had and still has on her. Consequently, I've come to realize that grief doesn't have an expiration date. Most never fully accept the loss, but merely learn to live with it. Okay. Is anybody brave enough to come and criticize or to mute in front of how many people are we in here? 177 people. Please, guys, engage with me. What are your thoughts on that piece? What do you think did I do right in terms of what we spoke about in the reflection? What do you think could have worked, didn't work? What do you think?
Can I take
Okay.
it?
Okay, yes. What's your name?
Hi everyone. My name is Samkelo Nzimande. And okay, so what I think is like unnecessary from the autobiography, it's the first 3 lines, which include the date of birth and as well as the information about the siblings. I feel like that is too much. So this individual needs to try to be concise, like trying to be concise. However, I like the information about trauma and grief. So I feel like the individual managed to reflect about about how trauma impacted them and as well as the family.
Cool. Thank you. Is Samakelo, ne? Anyone else wanna agree, disagree? Any different points that you wanna bring up?
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay, so as you said that the first lines are really unnecessary to input. I think a great way to have started is your understanding on what grief was as a child and how grief was probably just, I don't know, um, not well explained or in, oh, my sound is not clear. Just give me 2 seconds.
Okay, I hope I am clear now.
Yes, you are. Thanks.
Okay, so the first, as you explained it, the first 3 lines is unnecessary. How you could have started it is by first explaining what grief was taught you as a child when it did happen, and how that made the the process of getting to know your brother through your mom's explanation probably a bit better, and how even today that kind of grieving impacted how you grieve now on your life. But I think the ending on explaining that, realizing that grief isn't something that you get over, was really well put.
Thank you, guys. So, what questions, in terms of the reflection, weren't answered in that first part? What do you guys think? Um,
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I think that you reflected mostly about how it made your family and your mother feel, but you didn't reflect on how the situation affected you directly. So we know that it affected your mother and you saw grief, but we don't know how that has shaped you into wanting to become a psychologist and how it affected you directly. So you're letting the people know about your family, but nothing about you, yet you want to become the psychologist. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So I agree with everyone. The first 3 lines, yes, see, they are unnecessary and they're long. And why are they there? Like, what is the purpose of me sharing that? And the biographical information, they are in my application. I've said my name and surname. I have to say my date of birth when I applied. The first biographical the first application that you sent to the university has all those things. So it was just unnecessary. I didn't have to put all of that, and it took a lot of space. It could have been written concisely. And I could have just focused on my brother and the death and the impact it had on me and my mother. So I didn't have to start that whole paragraph and then grab on the last part about my late brother. So that is well caught. Like you guys picked it up well. And I like what the last speaker said. She said that I mostly spoke about how it affected my mother. You know, there was a bit of reflection, like, but it was brief. I could have reflected more on how that affected me and how it prepared me to be a psychologist. And obviously, that's just a small part of the bio, but it is important whenever you're writing something to ask yourself, like, is this necessary? Is this taking so much space here that I don't actually have to include it? And yeah, so the info about the siblings I agreed was too much. This could have been concise, but I did manage a little bit to reflect on the grief and how my relationship with grief was until I saw my mom grieve my brother. Okay, so is there any last thoughts, anything that I missed that somebody wants to speak on?
Yes, Selina, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And yourself?
Good, thanks. This is Latabo. I think the last thing that I picked up is that you did not mention how this has prepared you for the field of psychology. So that's the one thing that I picked up on.
Yes, yes. So that's very important. Thank you. That's very important to also mention. And maybe you don't mention as early as possible. Maybe it will come in towards the middle of the body. Um, but make sure that you somewhere mention how this has prepared you to be a psychologist, you know, and how grappling with grief, like in my instance, makes me understand that people grieve differently, and I need to be able to hold space for somebody who will be grieving, but they come into my session and they laugh. Like, that's just a different way of a person dealing with grief. Like, it has prepared me to look at life with a different lens. Like, reflect on how has this experience or this event influenced you? How has it impacted you? How does it make you feel? And how has it prepared you to become a psychologist? Okay. So
Selina,
I'm good.
okay.
Yes.
It's okay if you're moving on. It's okay.
No, you can speak. Let's engage.
Oh, no, I wanted to say, I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I wanted to say that in total agreement with what everyone has said, but I'm just thinking on, where you're mentioning you have siblings and so forth. I don't think it's entirely unnecessary, and it would have been an important point had it been a reflection that you wanted to bring out by being in such a family structure, because I do believe that by virtue of not being in this nuclear what can I say, family structure, there are certain factors that are also contributing to the person that you are in this sort of space. So I do think that just reflecting a tad more shows then the importance of why you put this here and how then it has influenced you as 2025, the woman that you are now. Because I do believe that this family structure does really play a role in our traumas, however, so I think it's not entirely unnecessary. It's unnecessary because it didn't reflect, but it's not entirely unnecessary. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a beautiful, beautiful point. The family structure is so important, and it does prepare you to become a psychologist. But the problem in that is I didn't reflect on it. So whenever you don't reflect on something and it's just information, then it's useless. And I think that's what you picked up on. Like, there could have been such a beautiful opportunity to reflect on how growing up in a blended family and with so many different siblings and the age gaps and all these things, it could have been such a beautiful reflection of how that has prepared me to be a psychologist and the diversity that is in our field. I think there was such a missed opportunity there, right? And it's important that you always, literally every sentence that you write, that you put in, let it mean and serve a purpose. Don't just put it there, because they will read that first part and think, oh, this girl's from such a blended family. I wonder how it impacted, how it influenced her. You know, I don't think it's like, don't leave them wondering and be like, why didn't she put more? I think sometimes it's good to leave them wondering if it's like a cliffhanger and it's nicely written, but that's not even a cliffhanger. It's just like it's there, so what? But I think it's important that you make sure there's a reflective component to everything that you write. And not every sentence has to be reflection, guys. That can also be too much. All right, so Linda has a question. Let me quickly see. There's one question that I just want to see from the chat. I have a question. Does one reflect on one encounter at a time, how it prepares them for pursuing psychology, or can you reflect on different encounters one deems relevant and then reflect on how these encounters prepare them for psychology? I think you just be mindful of the page limit, the word limit. I think if there is significant life events that have made an impact on your life that you feel are important to include, that the panel needs to know, because they will know why this journey is so important to you and why you're taking this journey. I think you can speak on more than one encounter, but whatever you put, they'll also be able to have knowledge in you that you'll be able to speak on it. Know yourself well enough to know if this comes up in an interview, will I be able to speak on it? Will I be able to not be triggered? And also, do not spill and you give everything, and everything is just the reflection, and you've learned so much, and this is like, don't make it too much. I would rather stick to one or two events and speak and reflect on it, because you also don't have a lot of time in terms of writing, and you will also have an opportunity to, if you miss something that you didn't get to speak on, to say it in the interviews. But remember, this is not the first interview, paper interview, and you want to, you want to get to the point, and you want to show them, this is why I'm ready, this is why I am trainable, and this is why you need to choose me. So don't put too much that it will overwhelm maybe the person reading it. I don't know, I actually feel like I don't know how to answer that question sometimes, because it depends on your story and what you want to include and whether it has impacted you. So yeah. Okay, guys, just for the sake of time, I will move on and then I will answer some of the questions at the end. I would like to share my screen again. So we're gonna go, is my screen sharing? Okay, we're gonna go to the second one. So this is the one the other one that I would like you guys to talk about. It says, as I reflect upon my life, it becomes clear that my own life events, emotional experiences, and insights have propelled me toward this moment, where I stand ready to embark on a journey of helping others navigate their own challenges. One pivotal moment that propelled me towards the path of psychology was the intimate conversation I had with my mother at the tender age of 8 years. Sitting on her bed, she vulnerably shared the depths of her own trauma and resilience. Her stories of loss, homelessness, and personal tragedy evoked within me a deep sense of admiration for her unyielding strength. At that moment, I made a promise to myself and to her, vowing to support her in her healing journey. This promise became the cornerstone of my motivation to pursue psychology, providing me with providing the unwavering drive to transform pain into purpose. Through my mother's life story, I don't want to include everything because it gets too personal, but then I continued to reflect what my mother's life story taught me and how it prepared me to be a psychologist, right? Clear difference from the first one. 5 years later is the time gap between the two essays. Any thoughts on it? Anybody want to share? What's what is different? What looks different now? And this is how I started it. I didn't start it with my name and surname and things like that. Anybody?
Sorry, Selina. Can you please put it up again so that we can read it, if you don't mind?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want to share what do you guys think was different compared to the other one, and where, like, what changed? What do you think I did well? What I did not do well? Where I could have improved? Things like that.
I'd like to share. I think with this one, it's more straight to the point. You're not including unnecessary information in as much as it's still more a reflection of your mother's journey, but it's more, I think, I'm assuming, it shaped how you viewed the world as well, through the stories that she told. So I think this one is a much better improvement from the last one.
Okay, thank you, Busi. Anyone else? You can also give criticisms there, because we don't know if it made it in or not. It could just be, yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Selina.
Hello.
Thank you. From my side, it's straight to the point, but I feel like it's on the surface. It lacks the depth of, what really, really kind of happened. Like you still have to probe, into your experience. I feel like, yes, I feel that way. But it's straight to the point, but it's not, doesn't have depth, somehow. Yeah, that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Selina. It's Lethala again. Sorry. Okay, so I do take note of the fact that you said you don't want to share more. So I'm guessing that you did share what your mother shared with you. However, I feel that there is some connection as compared to the previous one, whereby you do share that there's certain things which you learned, and those things obviously paved a pivotal role, or rather a pivotal way for you in terms of why you want to enter the field of I beg your pardon, of counseling psychology. Because sometimes I feel that the things that we learn do not necessarily have to be what we experience, but we can actually learn from other people's traumas. And I believe perhaps that's what actually paved that way for you.
Yes. Thank you
Can
so
I
much, guys.
can I
Um,
also ask a question?
yes.
So from the last few lines, it seems like this is just a promise to your mother, like, but what about you? Because from everything that I'm reading, it creates it raises questions about your passion for psychology. It seems like trauma, like it's all about trauma and creating a desire for you to become a psychologist. But do you really want it? If it wasn't for the traumatic event, would you still want to be like a psychologist?
Okay. Thank you. I think that's the beauty about a autobiography. It does need you to leave the panel wanting more or wanting to understand more. And I think that question would have been such a beautiful question in a panel interview. Like, it seems like it's all about trauma and whatnot. Remember also, this is just a small part of it. There's a lot more that I say because it's also a page. But the thing is, this one, I feel like I chose one event. I chose to focus on my mom and how being her psychologist from a young age. I mean, at 8 years old, I became my mom's psychologist. That's how I feel like I would relate to her, I'd advise her, I would be there for her, I would hold space for her. That's where I learned empathy. That's where I learned to be present for somebody, even though I was so young. And that's how those values and those the values of empathy, unconditional positive regard, like those were already cultivated in me as a young person. So it's I am trying to show the panel straight to the point. I am ready to be a psychologist, and my life story from the young age of 8 years old, although it's not my exact life story. It's my mom and how I related to her, or my family dynamics and how I related to that. This has prepared me to be a psychologist. So that is what I chose to focus on. It's not only trauma that prepared me to be a psychologist, there's other positive things. Being able to be a listening ear to my friends. Those are the type of things I mention as it comes up in are relevant and I'm able to reflect on. But another thing that's important in an autobiography, if you're not going to get into detail, you don't want to be spilling and you don't want to um, say so much that it overwhelms sort of the person reading it. You can leave a room for curiosity, a room for people to ask you more on that. Elaborate what happened to your mom that left you feeling like you needed to come in and save the day, be parentified. What meaning did you make when that happened? There needs to be room for them to ask you more. You also want a bait. It's like a bait. I feel like an autobiography is like a little thing that shows them, listen, ask me. You need to hear more about this. So write it in that way. Ask people to read it. Ask people to criticize it, and don't be too sensitive that you don't want any. I was like that in my first application. I was so sensitive to rejection that I didn't let anybody read it. I just submitted it, and I thought it's good enough the way it is. But when I was reflecting as the years went, I decided let me ask people to read it. What do they think? Do they have any suggestion, or how can I reflect more? How can I present myself as being ready and trainable, and that I am, I'm hungry for this. It's important that you also show that, I'm really, really like, I want this. And how you show it is to show that you're ready for it. Because sometimes you want it, but you're not ready for it. And your life story, you haven't been able to communicate it in such a way that it shows that you are ready. Just for the sake of time, I'm not sure how long I still have. Nonhle, can you please indicate how long I still have? Then I can quickly go to the next item.
Good morning, Selina. You can continue because we did start, I think, 15 minutes late.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. So I'm gonna continue, guys. We'll go back to the autobiographies, but autobiographies are really important. It's literally the first introduction. So let's continue. So motivational letter, I struggle a bit with this one because I haven't written a motivational letter. I've always written the autobiography, or it's been a question in one of the documents that the university asks you to complete. So, and in that document, they ask you specific questions that allows you to sell yourself. They ask you questions about your work experience, any type of experience that has prepared you to be a psychologist. But whenever you're writing a motivation letter, it has to be different to an autobiography. This is literally where you tell them what you have to offer, why you align with their values. So this needs a lot of research. Okay. And instead of saying stuff like I'm passionate about psychology, this you demonstrate it through your experience. Né? You show them this is the job that I did and this is what I learned in this job and this is why I'm ready to go into this field. Okay. So you do need to do a lot of research in terms of why when you write a motivational letter, because you're motivating why they need to pick you and not the next person. And I know it sounds crazy because you don't know the next person and maybe they also need to get in, but yeah, it's like I am ready, choose me, and this is why I'm ready, and this is why I align with you. Okay. So mention if you can, like why you align with their theoretical orientation, why you align with their research focus, why their values resonate with you. I had to do a lot of research on different universities when I was doing my application because it's important when you're going for a job interview, you will research on the company so that you are able to speak their language. So it's important that when you're writing a motivational to also kind of speak their language and what they value and what they stand for. Okay. Be able to balance confidence with humility. Okay. Show them that you are ready, but you are willing to grow because you don't want to be now arrogant and be like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm amazing. And there's nothing you can teach me. Show your teachability as well that I feel prepared to go into this next part of my life, this next phase of my life where I'm getting trained now to be like a professional in the field. Okay. Okay. Guys, remember to switch off your mics. your audios. So this is what some motivational letters from what I get it from the different universities will ask you. They will ask you, please provide a narrative of your relevant work or volunteer experience that has prepared you for a career in counseling psychology. Describe what you did, where you did this, and how much or how often you did this volunteer work experience. It's a narrative, so you don't have to say it 1, 2, 3. This is where now you're telling a story, and there you're also reflecting. Okay, it's not just telling them events. This is what I learned when I was working with children. Children taught me so much patience that I know I'm going to need it when I'm working as a psychologist. And even with my group and my peers, this is why this job has prepared me to be able to work in this group dynamic that comes with being a master's student. So be able to say stuff like that as well. And then another one is I saw was, please write a brief motivation. It's little words, 300 words, for choosing counseling psychology. So you need to know what are the values of counseling psychology, what makes counseling psychologists different to other categories, and then be able to write a motivation letter of why you chose that field. Okay. So other motivational letters are also very specific. They ask you, what is your primary motivation for choosing psychology as a future career? Like you need to know, you need to be able to reflect. Don't bring, if they don't talk about, if it's not an autobiography, you don't have to write your life story and how it has prepared you. This is your primary motivation, your passion for wanting to I don't know, maybe social justice. I don't have a lot of examples at the top of my mind, but now this is your primary motivation and why you align with them and why they should choose you. Okay. And you know what motivates your application for selection to the counseling psychology program instead of clinical psychology? Those are type of questions that they ask in terms of the motivational letter. All right. There's a lot you will need to go do your due diligence and research. But I think the most important thing about motivational letters is making sure that you can demonstrate to the panel that you know why you want to do a certain category, why you feel that you're ready to do that category, and why you align with them and what they are offering. Okay. Is there any questions on motivational letters?
I think nobody has a question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Okay, so we're gonna move on to individual interviews. But before I move on, in terms of the autobiography and the motivational letter, right? Please remember that it is your responsibility to get other people to read through it and give you advice on it. I think I want to emphasize on starting it early enough so that you are able to do that, right? Because if you just write it and you submit it, you won't always be aware of the blind spots or the things that you're missing or the things that don't make sense. And what I've shared with you today in terms of the autobiographies and things like that, it is how I wrote. It is my how I approach writing. So you can approach it differently. That is not a template. That's not what you should follow. I'm not saying, please, I saw it was copied and pasted. Please don't copy and paste and try to make it look like mine or sound like mine. And I'm intentional with not telling you which one got in or didn't get in. And that's not important. That was not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise was to get you thinking about, is this reflective? Is this person being able to say the experiences, think about the experiences, and communicate it in a reflective way? That was the point of the whole exercise, for you to start thinking and integrating the knowledge. All right. So please remember that was the purpose. And then in terms of the individual panel interviews, so this is very nerve-wracking. This is very anxiety-provoking, guys. Panel interviews and individual interviews, like, I don't know if anyone can go in them without feeling any anxiety, without feeling like stress, because there is so many people sometimes in a panel. You don't know who to look at. Sometimes it's online. I remember one of my interviews with Stellenbosch was online, and there were so many people in the room, and I couldn't hear who's asking a question, and I was so stressed and so nervous. But the thing is, I don't think the panel knew or could see, because I was able to self-regulate and hide my anxiety, although I felt anxious. So you need to find ways, especially when you're approaching individual interviews and panel interviews, to know that it will be an anxiety provoking situation. How are you going to manage it? What are you going to do so that they don't see how freaked out you are, and how much you're overcompensating for your anxiety, because you end up doing that. Be able to manage that, okay, well in advance, like practice interviews with your friends or things like that. Okay, just to go to the slide. Individual interviews is not only about answering questions correctly, it's about showing your presence, your ability to think, and your curiosity. Okay. Are you willing to still learn? Are you willing to be able to ask questions? Like, you don't have to say it, but you can show it in how you answer, that you are teachable, that you're trainable, that you are ready for this next step of your training or your journey. Okay. So it's important that you know that they're not trying to catch you out. It sometimes feels that way because they do ask difficult questions, especially questions from your autobiography. And another thing about interviews that I realized, when you answer a question, be mindful of what you answer, because the next question is coming from what you answered. Because some of them don't even have time to read again your autobiography or whatnot. So whatever you give in an interview, it's the next question. It will most definitely, that's okay. Let me say from my experience, every interview, whatever I was answering, the next question came from that. So I needed to be mindful of, oh, so what I say here can determine this whole interview. It almost feels like you can literally manage this room by how you answer and what you say. And I learned that from my first interview I had an interview with UCT online, and like every question I was answering, the answer came from it. And then I decided in the next selection, I'm going to be mindful of what I say, because I want them to ask me this next question. So how I answer, I'm going to answer that I can answer this next question that they might ask. So you can maneuver like that, so that you can be able to make sure by the time I leave this interview, I want to make sure that they know everything that I want them to know. I want them to have as clear picture about me and my readability as possible. And because at the end of the day, when you do walk away, whether they choose you or not, then you'll know you've done your best. That anxiety did not speak on your behalf, that you did not shoot yourself in the foot because you were unable to regulate yourself and your nervous system. Okay, so be mindful of that, what you answer. And I think it's also to be mindful about the fact that you're communicating with your body as well, with your energy when you enter the room, your presence, how you are. Be mindful of us people. How am I when I meet strangers? Am I too withdrawn? Do I not engage? Because the thing about psychology, you will be put in situations where you need to engage, where you need to advocate for your patients or your clients, where you need to speak up. And if you're a very shy person and you don't really want to engage like that, sometimes you're going to have to kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit, just a little bit, so that you can show that you are able to maneuver those spaces if you need to. Okay. Make sure that you have an open body language when you're sitting, whether if it's an in-person interview, be mindful of how you're sitting. You like look them in the eyes, don't look away, because even when you're seeing a patient and they look away, there is a reason. There's always, we psychoanalyze a lot, but there's a reason why a person looks away. There's communication in how you move. So make sure that you're aware of how you are, the way you are when you're nervous. Maybe you will tap your foot, or you will get like, be aware of that and practice not doing that for the interview. Make sure you have a controlled speech pace, that you're able to breathe when you need to breathe, slow down when you need to slow down. Those are very important things to be aware, because we forget. Anxiety can literally take over, where you forget that, hey, I'm not breathing. I'm literally speaking so fast that I don't think I'm actually making any sense. So please be thoughtful in those things. Thoughtfulness is your strength. Okay. Um, also be ready to answer reflective questions. Like we said, like I said earlier, reflection is very important. In the interview, you will be asked to reflect. You will be given scenarios that are difficult, that question who you are, and you need to be able to not get offended. I remember one interview, I was so offended that I feel like I just blew it in a, like I blew it because I became so offended that I became defensive, and I tried to explain to them, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. If you're a very defensive person, be aware of that and make sure that you don't come across like that, because they will push you, because they want to see how you respond to pressure, how you respond to when somebody questions something that is valuable to you or something that's important to you. So if you are naturally inclined to be defensive or to be like offended when something close to your heart is attacked, be aware of that, because they'll pick up on it and then they'll stay in that part for the whole interview. It happened. I'm talking from experience. It might not happen to you, but be mindful, because I'm literally speaking from my own experience. But things do change and interviews do look different for each and every person. Okay. So in terms of possible questions, I don't know if anybody can see this, but I had this whole paper that I printed out for myself before interviews, before anything else. I wrote a list of questions, interview questions, possible questions from a panel, personal questions, professional questions, ethical dilemma questions. I wrote them down. I prepared well in advance, and then I answered those questions so that and we prepare differently, guys. One thing that I wanted in 2023 when I applied again, I didn't want to be caught off guard. I did not want to walk away and think I did not prepare enough and that's why I didn't get in. Because when I didn't get in at the different universities, Stellenbosch, UCT, and everybody else, I was just like, I know I did my best, and I know that I answered well, and I know that I wasn't rehearsed and I was authentic. And yes, I had practice, because I couldn't say all the answers the way I had practiced them, but I knew that I knew what I wanted to bring across in an interview. So yeah, the question that I always got was, tell us about yourself. And I think it's an icebreaker. They always ask you this question. Well, in my experience, most of the interviews started with, tell us about yourself, who you are. And I am from a large family, so I always start with, I am Selina, as you know, and I'm from a big family. Like I'm the last one of 6 girls, and you can imagine our family gatherings are quite big, so we don't even need to invite anybody. So I make it light-hearted. I don't go in there and give them like boring stuff. I make them laugh in a sense when I start with, tell us about yourself. It just lightens the mood. They're also trying to get you comfortable, because I mean, it's very hard when you think about, tell us about yourself, and in that moment you might freeze. So I always have like a list of things I would like to start with to make it lighthearted for everybody. I don't tell jokes per se, but I will say something that is personal, but it's kind of funny. It's not a joke, but it's kind of funny. Yeah, so do that if you're comfortable. When they ask you, tell us about yourself. There will come questions if you're applying for a specific category. There will come questions about that. For example, they will say, this is a question I got that I think is very important to be aware of. They'll say, counseling psychologists work with individuals, couples, families, groups, organizations, and communities. What personal strengths would assist you when working in these varied contexts? So in my little paper, I had prepared, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So when this question came, I really could remember, okay, these are my strengths, and this is how these strengths would help me work in these different settings. Okay. So be aware of your strengths and weaknesses, write them down, ask people around you to maybe make comments on what they think your strengths are, because sometimes you don't always know. But be aware, those are the type of questions that do come up. And this is also a question that I found came up in a lot of my counseling psychology interviews, but we value social justice as counseling psychologists. We value working against inequality and discrimination, and you need to know this, okay? So how would you demonstrate this value? How would you speak up against injustice? What previous situations have you spoken up when there was an injustice thing done? It can be when your friend was being discriminated against. It can literally be everything, but have scenarios and actual real experiences with this, where you could have spoken up in situations like this. It is also very important. This comes up in interviews and panel questions. Why not clinical? Why not industrial? Why not educational? Why counseling psychology? And you need to know the values of counseling psychology. You need to know why you as a person align with counseling psychology values and their framework and how they view people. Because it is important to know why you are choosing the lens that you are choosing. Okay. To view people. I remember I had been applying for both clinical and counseling psychology, right? And sometimes in these interview processes, I get confused of whether it's a counseling or clinical psychology interview, because you apply to so many universities that you're human. You might even forget while you're speaking that this is actually a clinical interview. So when I was applying for counseling psychology, it was one of the universities. I was answering, and then I ended up saying, yeah, and this is why I am applying for clinical psychology. And that was a counseling psychology interview. Those things happen, guys. It has happened to me. And that whole interview, the next hour, they were focused on that mistake. Like, what did you say? Like, are you saying you are applying for clinical? You know, this is a counseling psychology interview. I said, no, I know. It's just the slip of the tongue. And they were like, no, tell us about counseling psychology. What makes you ready to be a counseling psychologist? And I explained why I chose both and why I think I can do both. And at some point, like I said previously, that's the interview where I got defensive because I was trying to show them that I can do both. But at the end of actually the selection process, that's when I realized actually I can't. I'm not both. Yes, I want to be both, but I'm not. I am more aligned with counseling psychology. And that's when I started focusing on counseling psychology, right? So for me, that was my learning and my experience. But you need to be aware when you're applying for both of these categories that things like that can happen, where you might need to defend why you're applying for both and why do you think you're better suited for both when the lenses are so different. Yes, there's similarities. Yes, there is a lot of classes that we have together with clinical psychology and some classes we had with research psychologists. So there are similarities and things like that, but there are also very different differences. Okay. Also be able to answer why that university, and that goes with research. You need to have done research to be able to answer that. Okay. I wanted us to engage with this one, but I don't know if we're gonna have the time. I'm just going to continue. I had asked for feedback, right? For feedback from one of the universities that I didn't get through to, and they said that they gave me this. And I just want one person, guys, to read it. And then from what they read, to tell me what were these people looking for in a panel interview. And it's one university, so different universities look for different things. So it's important to know that. But I just want you to know, like, this is some of the things that they do look at, and how I could have done better is what they said here. Just one person, just for the sake of time, read it and tell me 3 things that they were looking for from the panel interview that I didn't show. Is there anybody willing?
I don't mind going. My name is Nicole. It says, Dear Selina, thank you for your request for feedback from the selection process. You are a strong applicant, which is why we placed you on the waiting list. Unfortunately, all our applicants have taken up their spots, but I'd encourage you to apply again. While you performed consistently well during the interviews and role play in phase 2, other applicants performed better at the panel interview on the day. Applicants who performed particularly well were able to respond thoughtfully to feedback in the moment, demonstrating how trainable they are and how they would respond to supervision. These applicants were able to engage critically with their own positionality and what that may mean for how clients experience them. Finally, they were able to speak convincingly about why they felt that they were ready to train at this stage in their development and what they would bring to a training program. I hope these points help you to prepare for future selection processes. Okay, so from this, I think one of the first things that I realized there is that they were able to take feedback really well and not get defensive or offended, but rather take it in as positive and show that they're trainable, that they're able to take criticism without taking it personally. And now I can't really remember what else there was. Maybe if you could show the thing again.
Okay, is anybody else remember? I don't want to share again because I don't want you guys to take screenshots. Please don't take screenshots of it. It's very personal thing that I am sharing. I know this thing's going to be placed recorded, but please don't take screenshots.
Hi,
Can I-
I'd like to go. Hello.
Hello, you can go.
So yeah, I picked up like 3 things from that. So it's like the ability to respond thoughtfully to feedback. So they did not, like, they really were in the moment and really being mindful of what was being said to them and how they were responding to questions. And then they were able to engage with like where they stand in terms of being like a counseling psychologist, really understanding what they want to do. I don't know, I'm not sure. And then they were convincing that they were ready to become psychologists. So yeah, they sold their story very well.
Yeah. So you see our panel interview. Thanks, guys. You see our panel interview is so important as well because that's where they put the pressure cooker on. I did well with role plays. I did well with everything else, paper selection until the panel interview, where that's an interview I made a slip about clinical and counseling, and I got defensive and I got annoyed. Like it was just a lot, and then I feel like I shot myself in the foot. But the feedback was so powerful that when I walked into UP's selection, that's what I demonstrated. I demonstrated my ability to think thoughtfully, to engage with feedback in a way that shows I am ready to grow and learn, and that I'm not a know-it-all, that I've been through things that have prepared me for the stage of my life, but I am still willing to learn. I was able to, to take in the feedback, integrate it, and do better the next selection point. So it is important that if you do go through the different selection process, ask for feedback, get feedback, grow from the feedback, and make sure that you are constantly taking note of how you are in the different situations and how you can improve. Because the minute I left that interview, I knew that I did not show my positionality. Because they asked me one question about, as a Black Setswana girl, how would I, what value would I bring to the class? And I thought, Black Setswana girls, I was overthinking it. But you need to be aware of your positionality. That's my position, that's who I am. And how do I relate to others based on that? How do I relate to others based on my language, based on my skin color, based on my ethnicity, the school I went to, the people that I have around my life? Like, it's a very important thing to reflect on. Ask yourself questions as a white Afrikaans girl, like what diverse, like what are you going to be bringing that's different? Because another question that one of my colleagues will ask is, there's so many white people in the field, what difference are you going to make? And that caught her off guard because you think that's very offensive. But those type of questions that are going to come, or like, there's too many Zulu men that are psychologists. This is just an example. And no, it's not the case. But like, what value do you think you're going to bring into the field? Like, those are very in your face questions, and you can't be defensive or offended. You need to be able to think about those questions. Like, as a male, if you are a male and you're doing a role play with a female, be aware of how you're sitting, be aware of GBV and the conversations that are happening regarding male and females in our country and how we relate in terms of safety. So that when they're asking in an interview, like, hey, you were sitting too close to the person you were doing a role play with, like, that you don't be offended and think like, no, I wasn't. like be aware of those things. And these are just from my personal experiences and the things that I've heard. Yes, it might look different, but I'm just asking you to think about certain things, all right? I think I'm out of time because I'm supposed to end. But we are at the end now. So let's go to role play. So remember, role play, this is about showing your ability to be present with another person. It's not about getting it right and having all the solutions and solving the client's problems or diagnosing them or asking them if they are, how severely depressed they are. It's not about that. It's about you being able to be present for somebody in their pain or in their distress or in whatever they're going through. Because sometimes people that are role play are not going through anything, and can you still be present with somebody when there's no problem, there's nothing to fix, you're just there for them? Are you able to do that? Are you able to, in that moment, because role plays are anxiety provoking, so you need to be able to contain your own anxiety. Mindful breathing, use eye contact, be relaxed, okay? And make sure that you don't do any corrective listening. Don't reframe emotions into something positive and silver line people's problems. Like, a lot of people do that, and then it becomes invalidating when you're like, oh, you say that you failed matric, but at least you got into university. It's not the course that you wanted, but at least don't at least people's problems. Like, don't ever catch yourself doing that, because it's invalidating, especially in a role play. And remember that your presence matters more than your words. Are you able to sit with the person, mirror what they're going through, mirror their emotions and their experiences? One thing that's important to note as well is, when you're doing a role play, be aware of where your patient is at, or where your client is at, sorry. For example, if you start a role play and the client is like presenting with low mood, they're not okay. Don't go in there and be like, hello, my name is Selina. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to therapy. No, you are not mirroring their mood. You are literally, you can't, don't do that. Say like, hi, how are you? Walk in mirroring whatever they are feeling. It's important. That's very important for a role play. And I say it because I got I got caught with this, especially in one of the interviews at UCT, the role play interviews. I I came in like so excited, so high energy, but my client was feeling suicidal and depressed. And had I mirrored that, I think I would have done super well in helping her feel seen and validated, and for her to know that I empathize with her and I'm there with her and I understand. And I think the most important thing is to help people feel understood. So you will need to change your tone. You will need to, if you're a loud person, to not be that loud. Change your voice, Nyana, to make sure that it sounds empathetic. I know sometimes it's silly, um, when you have to sort of like mirror somebody, but it is important because it shows that I am here and I see you're going through so much. So it's important to be able to do that, especially in role plays. Do not perform, do not be too scripted, do not go in there thinking, I have the DSM-5 at the back of my mind and I'm going to show these people that I can diagnose. It's not about that. Think of it as you are there for a friend and you are there to just listen and be there for them. When you ask questions that are mindful, that are with purpose. Don't ask questions for the sake of asking questions. It's important that you reflect what the person is feeling, so that you make sure that you understand them. Okay. Because it's important that they feel understood, and the only way to make sure somebody feels understood is to check in. Am I understanding you correctly? Is this what you're going through? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing this and this. Be mindful of those specific words that you can use in a role play. But don't overdo it, and then you are speaking like a psychologist that's been in the field for 10 years. Like, just be authentic as well. So that it shows for you're still going to be trained. You're still going to do a lot of role plays in your masters. So that's also important to take into consideration, that they want to see if you at least have basic counseling skills, the basics. So yeah, I think that then brings me to the end of our session. Now, I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of your questions, but all the best with the applications. You can do it. You have it in you to really change. If you were getting rejected in the past, to change this next round of application process to your favor. And if you don't get in this time, it's not about you. It's literally, maybe it's not the timing, maybe you don't align with the university. Never ever make it personal. But I think you'll never make it personal if you know you did your best in preparing and doing your due diligence in terms of all the expectations from the research proposal or the research application process. So yeah, that's it from me. I hope you learned a lot. Okay.
Thank you, Selina. Thank you so much for your valuable contributions this morning. Your advice was practical. Your presentations were amazing. Your practical advice on crafting a compelling autobiography and navigating the panel interview has been truly enlightening, as well as your passion for mentoring aspiring psychologists. It shines through, and we are grateful for the wealth of knowledge that you shared with us.